Hi guys, my name is Vanessa Smedley and I'm a painter. Today we are going to paint this nice little scene right here from Monet's Gardens in Giverny, France. I think that's kind of how you pronounce it. I did take French a long time ago, but then again, I am an Okie, so I probably butchered that. Anyways, my mother-in-law and father-in-law went to France last year. They went to Monet's Gardens, took a bunch of photos. We may end up doing a whole series of these, I don't know. But we're going to use Sennelier paint today, which is also French. I have not used that paint before. We're going to use Arches paper, or Arche, as they would say. Kind of. And we're just going to see how we do. So, let's do this! Here are today's materials. Feel free to screenshot this, or they are listed in the description for you. There are a lot of intense, vibrant flowers in the bottom third of this painting, so I'm taking some masking fluid and I'm masking those out because I want that color to be nice and pure. So I dip my brush into a mixture of liquid dish soap and water to protect it, and then I dip it into the masking fluid. After you add it in here, let it dry for at least 30 minutes. I'm going to start out by mixing some colors, and like I said, I've not used this Sennelier paint before, and there are actually a lot of colors on this particular palette that I've not used either, including this Phthalo green light. So I figured I might as well give these colors a whirl. So I'm mixing the Pthalo green light with a little bit of Alizarin Crimson to gray it down because it's a very bright color. Next I'm mixing some Pthalo Blue with some lemon yellow, and then add in a little bit of alizarin to gray that down as well. Also, for this very distant tree in the background that looks kind of purplish, I'm going with some Dioxazine Purple, mixing in some lemon yellow to gray it down, and then just a touch of Ultramarine Blue to give it a little bit of a cooler feel. You know me, I always like to start with the sky, so in this case it's a very, very lightly tinted sky, just barely darker than white. So I'm wetting the entire thing and I'm adding just a very light hint of this Cinereous Blue. That's another one of those colors I haven't actually tried before, but it's in this palette, so I thought I'd give it a go. So I've added that in very, very lightly, and I'm allowing that to soak in for a minute or two before I add in some of the purple that I mixed up for this very distant tree. And I'm adding that in very, very lightly, and adding in a little bit darker at the bottom where there's shadow. I've allowed all that to dry, and now I'm coming back in with a darker mixture and dry brushing in some texture here and some of the shadows and putting in some of the branches. Then I'm using my light green mixture here for this tree on the right, and then I'm adding my darker green in the middle for some shadow on that. Then I'm adding some Naples Yellow Deep to the top of this bush on the other side, and my lighter green at the bottom of it, and then a little bit of Payne's Gray in the bottom here to create a shadow. Then adding some more texture back into this tree in the back, a little bit darker here and there, and we'll just let that dry now. And now I'm going to paint in a base coat for this entire middle ground here. So I'm using my lightest green, and I'm adding it a little bit thicker towards the bottom where there might be a little bit of shadow, adding in my darker green at the bottom, again to create shadow, adding in a little bit of that Naples Yellow Deep, and then a little bit of clean water at the top. That's going to create a little bit of a textured background, but I don't mind it in this case. I feel like that adds to the effect. So I'm coming back in with my lighter green. We're going to do this other section, making sure to paint around the pathways so that that won't be difficult later. I'm using my darker green mixture here to add in some variety here, and also some of the Naples Yellow. Then I'm lifting out some of the lighter areas where the sunshine is coming down intensely in the background. And then I'm going to add in some of this darker of the greens here for the shadow underneath the tree. And I'm just going to go ahead and add in a little bit of warm sepia here where you can see the dirt around the edges. I'm mixing up a little bit of warm sepia with just a hint of Dioxazine Purple in it, and we are going to cover the entire pathway area with that, with just a nice flat wash for right now, and then I'll come back in and do all the shadows at a later date, but this is just for the base color for the path. Time to work on this massive tree that is a significant portion of this painting. So I'm going to use another one of those colors that I haven't used before. This one is forest green, and I'm adding in a little bit of the warm sepia to that to warm it up just a little bit. It's got kind of too much of a blue tone for my liking. I mean, this tree does have a blue tone, but this is a little bit over the top. So I'm kind of bringing this back, dialing it back down to a little bit more of a natural color. So I'm going to start out by doing the lighter portions of the tree first, and I'm using my medium green for that. And then I'm going to use my darkest green that I just mixed and just dry brush all of this texture in. It's almost kind of a flat texture at this point because I'm not really adding much variation in tone, but I will come back in later and do most of that. Right now I'm just basically getting the area covered with paint. This is such a large area and it has to be such a dark color for this that you want to make sure and mix up plenty of paint beforehand. You don't want to run out in the middle and then, you know, not have enough to finish it. So make sure and mix up plenty beforehand. I just barely got away with it because I really could have mixed up a little bit more and I just barely got it all covered. So there's a little tip for you. Make sure you mix up more color than you think you might even need. Mixing more warm sepia with just a hint of Dioxazine Purple, and this is going to go on the tree trunk. Since it's all in shadow, it kind of all takes on a purple tone to me, so I've added a little bit of that in there. For the flower beds that are the closest to us, I'm starting out with my medium green here. And I'm just adding that all the way across here and making sure it's kind of a splotchy edge where all those leaves would be hanging out over the path. Then I'm adding in my brown mixture with the Dioxazine Purple in it, adding, you know, that into some of the greenery area as well, just for some variation. And then adding one of my darker greens into it as well. And we're just going to do that across both of these little patches at the bottom here. Now that all of this middle ground is dry here, I'm just going to come back in and use all of my different colors of green, maybe some of the Naples yellow, and add in some details because right now it's kind of nondescript. So we're just making this a little bit more interesting. Just so you know, France does hold a special place in my heart because when I was 16 years old, I did get a chance to go. However, I only went to Paris and the Loire Valley, did not get a chance to see Monet's gardens. I really wish that I would have. Maybe someday I'll get to go back. I did, however, get to go to the Musée d'Orsay and see a lot of Monet's paintings. However, at that time I was kind of an idiot and really wasn't a Monet fan. Everyone's young and stupid at one point, right? And don't forget to add in some detail and some shadows on the trunk here. We've got what looks like a rose bush on top of a trellis here, so I'm using my darker greens here and I'm adding that in. And here I'm just adding in some very, very bright little touches of color to show that these are all flowers in the distance. You can pick whatever colors you want. I didn't even pay attention to which ones that I grabbed. So there's a red, there's some purples, just have at it. It's time to add some shadows on the pathway here. So I'm taking my mixture of sepia and Dioxazine Purple and I'm adding this in kind of like a patchy little pattern here because you can see some of the light coming through the tree branches. So I'm doing that underneath the tree and then I'm just following it all the way to the edge because it's quite a lot of shadow right here. And then I'm adding some more shadow into these back areas and also into the foreground area. Now that it's all dry, I can add in some more detail to make it look more like the leaves of the plants here. And then I mixed some sepia with some Payne's gray and I'm going to use that for a nice dark brown. It's time to add some detail to the tree. So right now it's kind of a flat color, it's real boring. So we're gonna add a very deep dark color here and add some separation between the different branches that are here. So I've mixed some forest green, some warm sepia, and some Payne's gray to make a really dark, deep saturated color. And I'm adding that into the darkest shadowed areas here to add some separation between the branches. That will give it more visual interest and it will show that the roundness of this tree a little bit better. It was looking a little flat, Monet's garden does of course also include a pond, which is where the water lilies were that he used to paint all the time. He painted these water lilies over 250 times in his lifetime, but I thought it was hilarious that he actually tasked a gardener to go out and clean the water lilies off before he would paint them every day. So this gardener had to go out and basically squeegee off the soot from the passing trains every day. I mean, you can't have sooty water lilies, according to Monet anyway. Back to the foreground. And if you look at the original picture, you'll see that this is not just one big mass of vegetation here. There's a lot of dirt spaced in between all these little plants. I'm thinking that these are roses and they kind of need a lot of room to breathe, so that's what's going on here. I've come back in with my sepia and Payne's gray mix, and I'm adding that into the space in between these plants to make it look like there's dirt there, obviously. The next order of business here is that there's a very tall trellis holding up a kind of floating rose plant here in the foreground. So I'm going to mix up some Pthalo Blue and some lemon yellow in a very, very saturated green, and we're going to add that to the trellis. Then I take my number 4 round brush and I run a nice straight lines down for this trellis here. And then I am going to start on the other side of the painting and start removing the masking fluid with my rubber cement eraser. Before I start removing it right underneath the trellis, I'm going to take a hairdryer to it real quick so that I don't smudge the trellis. Okay, so I did that off camera, but anyways, now I am going back in with my number 4 round brush and I am using Bright Red, which is another one of the colors that I have not tried yet in this Sennelier palette. I'm using Bright Red to touch up all of these rose heads here. Now some of them, most of them are red, and it looks like there are some of them that are kind of light pink. So I'm coming back in and doing the majority of them red, and then I'm going to leave a few for pink. For the pink roses, I've mixed up a little bit of Carmine, or Carmine. I don't know exactly how you pronounce that one either. Very, very watery. I haven't used that color before yet either. And I mixed it with a little bit of Dioxazine Purple to give it a little bit of a cooler tone to it. And now I'm coming in and filling in all the rest of the white roses that I have here. And now I'm coming in with some of the Dioxazine Purple mixed with a little bit of Ultramarine Blue to give it a little bit of a cooler tone, and doing some of these purpley flowers underneath the tree. For a shadow side to all these roses, I'm just coming back in with a little bit of dark Alizarin Crimson, just running that along the bottom side of these. I'm not trying to do a ton of detail, but I do want it to show just a little bit of shadow. I'll do the same thing with the pink ones. I'll just come back in with a darker shade of the Carmine, or Carmine, whatever it is. Maybe I should look that up. But, I mean, you know, I'll probably just call it whatever I want to. And I'm just adding a shadow side to those as well. A little bit of shadow under the irises here, and I'm going to call that done. And here's the finished painting, all signed and dried and with the tape removed and all that kind of stuff. And as far as the Sennelier paint goes, I really like it. I mean, I can't tell just a ton of difference between that and Daniel Smith in the way that it handles. I do know it re-wets really easily. I do think it has honey as its base, and so that's probably the reason for that. But I mean, I like it. I think it's a good paint. If you want a more in-depth review on that, you'll probably have to find somebody else, because I'm not really much of a reviewer. I just use it, and if I like it, then it's cool. And there you have it, a nice little serene scene from the man himself's gardens. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all of that stuff, because it really does help. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time. Monet's Gardens in Giverny, France. Giverny? I don't know.